games. But scary. Yeah, I love horror games. Actually, it's probably my favorite type of game. But if there's something I love more than just your average horror game, is when people bring horror to stuff that didn't have it before. Or at least that wasn't made with it in mind. Think of, for example, games like Roblox or Minecraft. Games that via UGC, be it mods or in-game creation tools, allows people to turn what is basically a relatively safe game into a genuine horror experience. I probably don't need to remind you of games like Pressure or Doors, or the countless amount of spooky Minecraft mods that followed the infamous Cave Dweller. Whether these mods are actually good or not is a whole nother question though. And while some of these are really great and could honestly make a whole video of their own, there's a specific game that honestly just means so much more to me than any other. One that, not to get too sappy too early in the video, but really, trust me when I say this was like 99% of my childhood. A game that not only shared in bringing pre-existing creepypastas to life, but also sprouted a myriad of completely original creations. All made in an engine that has tools that both make it really easy to get into the fun of creation, while also having its more technical and complex side for those willing to put in the effort. And honestly, I'm just gonna say it, my favorite game franchise ever that inspired everything, including the Sona I use for videos right now. Honestly, I don't know why I'm being around the bush here. You already saw the title of the video. This is gonna be a video about the game RPG Maker. Wait, that's not true. Hold on. It's Roblox. No, it's LittleBigPlanet. It's LittleBigPlanet. It's LittleBigPlanet. Hey everyone, you might have noticed that the audio quality in this video is inconsistent, to say the least. Parts of this video were actually recorded a long time ago, with me having to either redub or re-edit entire segments of the video due to files getting either lost or corrupted. And yeah, as you might have guessed, the quality did take kind of a hit as I tried restitching it back together. Honestly, it's kind of a miracle that this video released in the first place, but since this topic really does mean a lot to me, I just decided to push through and release it as best as I could. Alright, thank you so much for understanding, and honestly, let's just get back to the video. So, what's this legendary LittleBigPlanet that was so good that it made me not only do a video about it, but hyperfixate on it for the past 15 years, collecting almost every version I could find, and I'm not even close to finishing my collection because there's so many, including this really cool steel cover for LBP2 that honestly just looks so clean, and I wish I could get it, but it's so expensive on... Yeah, it wasn't even that expensive, I just had to look better. Anyway, what do you think about this, Satsune Miku? In its most basic form, it can only really be described as a peak. Jokes aside, I think that LittleBigPlanet and how you're gonna experience this game is basically divided into two different modes. So first of all, there's the story mode, which, just by the title, you can kinda guess what it is. It's a collection of pre-selected levels that basically tell the main story of the game, and this is probably what you're gonna spend the least time playing, or at least you would have if the server. And yeah, I could spend hours talking about the story mode and how much it affected me as a person, but that's not really the main focus of the game. I mean, they're there, and you should play them to get the material so you can create your own levels, but really, that's just like 20% of what the game is actually about, which is also the only 20% that is available now because Sony sucks. The main part of the game that you're actually gonna spend time playing is the Earth and Moon. That being the Moon, where you create your level, the Earth, where you publish them. You can see their Earth, they can see yours. They can see your levels, you can see theirs. And it's basically a big community where you can share whatever you made with others, making for infinite content. And while the game was mostly platform platforming, even in the story mode, sometimes you just get a level that completely changes how the game is played. And those tools that the developers used are the exact same tools that are available for the players to use too. So while the developers probably had some limits in mind on what could be possible to make, never underestimate your fans because they will do whatever this is. This clip is literally someone doing an entire arcade cabinet inside of a platformer engine, and you can use those techniques later when you publish your levels. Okay, so, final things I need to say before we actually get into the meat of the video. That, hey, since the servers are gone, how did you get the footage? How did you get to play the levels? And well, the answer is custom servers made by fans. There are a lot of them, like LittleBigRefresh and Beacon, but for the sake of the video, I did choose to use Beacon. But hey, I've tried both and they're both really good, so if you want to keep the spirit of LBP alive, that's the best way you can do so. And the best part is, a lot of people have made it their mission to archive the old levels from the original servers and put them on the new ones. Of course, not all of them are there, but all the most popular classics are present. But for the levels that weren't backed up, I will need to use some old footage from YouTube. So yeah, the credit for the creator whose footage I'm using will be appearing on screen just like this. But yeah, that's about it. Thank you to all the creators that made all of this footage available. And now, if you don't mind, there's a guy named Jeff trying to break down my door. I should probably start running. Alright, so there's probably a few questions that are already going through your mind, so let me answer them right away. First of all, who is Crimson Fang 9, and why do they have the privilege of having an entire section named after them? And well, Crimson Fang 9 is to most of the LBP community considered the undisputed champion of LBP horror, having created the most classic levels that not only had the entire LBP community playing them, but managed to break through into the general audience as well, becoming a big part of what LBP is even known for outside of its relatively small online presence. In fact, on the Beacon fan server, it's on the 3rd spot for most played level of all time, which kind of proves that even all these years later, it's one of the things that people remember about LittleBigPlanet and want to experience again. There's a good portion of you that will just have memories flooding back to them as soon as I mention Beware of Jeff the Killer, or just Jeff the Killer trademark if you are playing the new version. I should say that Crimson Fang 9 actually uploaded their levels on the fan server directly, which means their library of games is all backed up for you to play. But the version of the Jeff the Killer map that is backed up on the server is a remastered version that just basically has better visuals. Now, from what I've seen, there's no real difference gameplay-wise between the two versions, but for the sake of not forcing you guys to sit through this very compressed footage, I will be using the newer version for the visuals on the video. But just know that if you were playing this back in the day, it will look more close to this, which obviously isn't bad. The original is still really good, but you know, I just want to be clear with you guys before we continue. Now, let's get to the chase and talk about the map itself, because as famous as it is, it really doesn't do anything that extraordinary with its mechanics. And that isn't me criticizing it. I genuinely feel that how simple it is part of its strengths. Its simplicity is why it's so engaging and fun to play with friends. So first of all, you start off at this house and must make your way to the right of the map to the scoreboard. But of course, in your way there are going to be a lot of different obstacles and the titular Jeff the Killer that will try to pop out of nowhere and surprise you, leading to a chase that will not only have Jeffy Boy laughing at you, but will have this like genuinely kind of intense song in the background that only stops when Jeff disappears. Now, to deal with Jeff, you basically have two options, and those will be relative to where you are on the map. You can either just keep running and hope that you reach the scoreboard before Jeff reaches you, or evade him by going somewhere he can't reach, which of course will waste a lot of time because you're basically waiting for him to disappear. But there's also the option of trying to juke him in a chase, which can work if you're willing to try try to outsmart his AI, which to be fair isn't really that hard to do because his AI is really simple. And while the map is really cool on its own, really the fun comes with playing with friends, as the map really is meant to be competitive because you'll either gain or lose points based on how many times you've died to Jeff along the way to victory, and of course, the person with the least deaths wins. And now this is, at least for me, the funnest part of the map. The ability to screw with your friends and make sure that they die and you don't. This is especially fun on 4-player parties, as every player will do all they can to make each other's experience living hell, causing embarrassing amounts of chaos. I partially blame that one video by Chilled Chaos that really just blew up because even in the video, you can tell how fun it is to play this level with friends.
Okay,
Ah! Oh my god! Yes! Oh shit! Oh fuck! The lighting's out of the house! Out of the house! Out of the house!
It was a clever ruse.
Because while I have never caught up with Chilled Chaos, and I don't even know what he's doing nowadays, one thing that I remember is that all those years ago, he was having so much fun playing this level. It's really nostalgic reliving all of these memories I have of this level, which kind of brings us to the next point, because some of these memories might have actually been misplaced. As I was recording the footage for this video, I noticed that some details I remembered from the map were seemingly missing. For example, I distinctively remember there being a bridge where Jeff would jump out of, and not only that, Jeff's design was a lot more different from the one I saw in game. And while I originally chalked this up to me playing the remaster, no, I went to check and none of these are that different in the original version. So what's happening here? Why do I have all of these false memories? Really, it all comes down to how popular the level got. Let me explain. One feature that LittleBigPlanet has is that you can choose a setting whether your level is copyable or not, which means that anyone can put it on their moon, change whatever they like, and then republish the level as their own creation. And you might think this is where it ends, right? Oh, someone just copied the level, changed some things, and then republished it. But no, actually, because Crimson Fang 9's levels weren't set to copyable, so something a lot weirder actually happened. What you're seeing now is a full recreation of Crimson Fang 9's original map. It has a lot of the same elements as the original and basically has the same start and end, but in the middle, there's a lot of things that are actually different. One of them being the bridge I misremember. And this level is actually set to copyable, so let me explain. Crimson Fang 9's level became so popular that people made their own version from the ground up, recreating everything they could and changing just enough for it to be original, and then set it to copyable, meaning that a lot of these levels that I remember being from the original are actually different versions made from the copyable version. So yeah, someone went through all the effort to make a copyable version so other people could make their own versions of the Jeff the Killer map, while the original was never touched. And wow, that is just, again, goes to show how dedicated this community can get. Other elements that are also different from the original are, for example, the spawn points where Jeff can actually, spawn. For example, in the copyable version, Jeff can actually spawn inside of the fridge in the main house, which is actually a pretty cool detail, not only because it leads to some funny moments where people weren't expecting it, but also because the kitchen really does go largely unused in the original version, and now there's a function for it, so cool, I guess. I think the main feature that sets the copyable version and the original apart is the existence of two different Jeff the Killers. There's this more monstrous version that of course spawns from the bridge and then goes to your house and the forest surrounding it, and there's another version that will spawn near the city that is more the standard Jeff the Killer that you're used to. But the thing is, these two acting at the same time means that there's, well, more of a challenge, obviously. Although something tells me that this wasn't as intentional as I'm giving it credit for because of a certain story behind the map's creation. According to the stories that I've seen, the original map was actually called Beware of the Beast from the Mountain of Death, with the level only being reskinned into a Jeff the Killer level because of the trend that was going on with the character. And I have to say, that story actually explains a lot of these elements perfectly. Like, for example, why do we have a more monstrous version of Jeff? Well, if this information is true, it would explain that it's probably just a reskin of a pre-existing creature with a Jeff coat of paint. But whether that's true or not, what is true is that this level was set to copyable, leading to a massive influx of levels that just changed certain elements and kept the broader theming. There were levels that made it harder, there were levels that made it easier, there were levels that just changed completely nothing things. Like, for example, this level just changed it to daytime, and that's literally all it did. And I kind of love that. While Crimson Fang 9 probably found this really annoying, I have to say, for the player base, this just made the level always interesting because you never knew what to expect because you had no way to really know if this was just the original map or some completely different version that completely overhauled it. And I think we have this type of level to blame for why the Sackbot Chaser levels became so big. In fact, Sackbot Chaser levels are actually really easy to make, which ends up being really good for new opportunities. In fact, let me just stop the video for a second and teach you how to make your own Sackbot Chaser, or, well, at least the basics of how to make one.
Today on How It's Made.
Sackbot Chaser levels. Open your Poppet and grab the Sackbot. If you don't know what Sackbots are, they're basically just player-like NPCs. Then open the tweak menu for the Sackbot and just start messing with how they play. The two essential options that you really need to have is that they follow the player and are hostile. While the player following thing is self-explanatory, the hostile option doesn't actually make the Sackbot hurt the player in any way. It just makes it so the Sackbot, instead of just following behind the player from a normal distance, it tries to overlap with the player's model, which really isn't much of a problem, but we'll get to how to actually make it dangerous later on. For now, just focus on making him look spooky, like he's gonna attack you at any moment if you just turn your back. And when you're done, you finally do the thing that makes the Sackbot hurt the player, that being adding an effect. Now, while most players use electricity because it has this cool animation where you can see the skeleton inside of Sackboy, any element works and plays basically the same. The only one that plays different being fire, because it gives players an opportunity to escape, as Sackboy will get hurt by the fire first and then die to it. So I guess fire can be useful if you're going for a more forgiving type of enemy. But yeah, voila, you just made your own little monster that will chase the player around the map. But there's some bonus things you can do to make it actually pop out. And when I say pop out, I mean that literally, as you can make the Sackbot appear out of nowhere and surprise the player, which is something that Jeff the Killer does. If you want to go the extra way, you can also place the monster on an emitter connected to a player sensor, although be sure to set the settings on the emitter correctly, as if you don't, it might result on more than one enemy spawning, which might not be what you want. And finally, if you want the monster to pop out, you can set a thrust on the emitter so it does a little jump whenever it spawns. And obviously when you're done, test out how your enemy looks. For example, I just did mine and I think it looks pretty good. But if you are following along, feel free to just tweak the settings so it fits the scenario you are making. And while this is the way I did it, there's a lot of ways to achieve the exact same effect. In fact, that's kind of the beauty of what makes LittleBigPlanet so cool. Even when you're trying to make the exact same thing as someone else did, you might arrive at the same result, but there's so many ways to go about it. And speaking of the many ways you can go about a chaser enemy, let's talk about another game that Crimson Fang 9 did. That being the Chicken Man. Listen, there's something really special about the Chicken Man that I really just can't explain. I think it's the fact that it's entirely original, or, well, at least mostly original. Couple that with the fact that it's really just a mix of horror and LBP's goofy charm that really makes this stand out a lot more than Jeff the Killer ever could. Well, at least in my opinion, of course. And while it's still relatively popular in the community, it really doesn't get enough credit like Jeff the Killer does, and I think that should change because I absolutely love this silly chainsaw-wielding chicken. Listen, all I'm saying is, what's better, a twink wielding a knife or a chicken with a chainsaw? The Chicken Man looking at Jeff the Killer's corpse. I thought you were stronger. The main thing about Chicken Man that really separates it from Jeff is that Chicken Man's spawns are a lot less forgiving, to the point where even if you know the map like the back of your hand, it's still gonna be hard to get to the end without dying at least once. Oh, and also, because I did mention it earlier, I will say that Chicken Man's sound is just as iconic to me as Jeff the Killer's laugh, or even more if I'm gonna be honest, because the sound of that chainsaw revving up with those clucking sounds in the background is honestly what I imagine hell itself is made of. It's so uniquely ear-grating yet threatening at the same time that I don't think I've ever seen an audio from a villain with that memorable of an impact. Although I have to say that, you know, gameplay-wise it is really similar to Jeff the Killer. In fact, it's the exact same type of map. The only thing I'd like to note is that at the end of the map there is a gate which you need to find a secret button to actually open and be able to win, which is actually really well hidden, but in a way that is a bit scummy if I'm gonna be honest. But honestly, that kind of unfairness is the reason I keep playing these types of maps, to be honest. It really is fun to watch someone else experience it for the first time. But here's the thing, this type of level wasn't actually the only thing Crimson Fang 9 would be known for, as his Slender level is much more technically impressive. In fact, I won't even attempt to explain how this works because I've never gotten how people do it. But using the Controlinator tool, they turned the entire level on its side, basically making it so it's a top-down perspective. And maybe to you it doesn't look that cool, but for me, this is so cool. In fact, this would not be the first or last map to use this formula, as it basically would become its own genre of horror maps like the Chaser levels also did. Okay, so gameplay, I don't think I need to explain it, right? It plays just like the Slender game, you having to pick up 8 pages and get out of there before Slenderman catches you, with the caveat being that since it's a bit harder to actually make the Slenderman mechanic work in game, it plays a little bit different. Since I assume it would be a lot harder to make the teleportation and running away thing work in LBP, what it does is a lot simpler. It runs around the map and always follows the player on a straight path. And when I say straight path, I mean that it can go through walls. It actually plays really similar to some enemies from Spooky's House of Jump Scares, if, for example, you're familiar with that game. With Slenderman's iconic static noise actually symbolizing how close or far away he is from you, with it becoming louder as he gets closer. As for other maps that he's made, there are a lot of them. Like the Shrekening, which, yeah, is more meme than actual horror, but yeah, bear with me, okay? Because really, despite the subject of the level, it has really cool visuals, lighting, small cutscenes, and even a hiding mechanic. And I think the coolest thing is that you can tell he's putting to use a lot of the elements we've learned about before. For example, having to collect Shrek's onions, which obviously calls back to Slenderman, Shrek being a chaser enemy with a gas effect, which of course is very similar to Jeff the Killer, new elements like having to hide in specific areas, and even small cutscenes, which is something we've seen before when Chicken Man becomes aggressive for the first time in his level. But if we want to talk about cutscenes and telling a story through Crimson Fang 9's levels, we have to go all the way back to Ao Oni. So yeah, cutscenes, something we have seen before in Crimson Fang 9's levels, but not to this degree, as these actually tell a full story. Of course, just being a rough recreation of the original story from the Ao Oni game. The map, while obviously not made with the same amount of expertise as others, does feel rewarding to explore, as you learn to navigate each hall and play against Ao Oni's pursuits. Getting new keys and opening new parts of the mansion really does feel really rewarding to me, especially because this level is not as linear as others we've seen. It really leads to memorizing certain parts of the map and being more effective in areas you've been before than in others. And yeah, perhaps I am letting my nostalgia goggles cloud what is at the end of the day a really simple map, especially because it is really rough and not that scary. But to be fair, this entire video has just been me with the rosiest of tinted glasses, so, you know, give this one a break. But yeah, I think that's about it for Crimson Fang 9. Yeah, I know, there's plenty of other levels that I've not talked about, and even the ones I did talk about, there's plenty of stuff that is still there for you to see. So yeah, you should probably give the levels a play for yourself, because me explaining is fine, but you playing for yourself is always gonna be more fun and enjoyable. Treat every level that I didn't talk about or those that I didn't go into detail about as a level that you get to go into and play for yourself. And for the levels that I did talk about, I hope that I sparked your interest and you go play them too. And this goes for every level that I'll talk about during the entire video, but also specifically Crimson Fang 9's because they are all on the Beacon fan servers, meaning that at least that ones are fully playable just for you. So, let's move on to the rest of the LBP community. What were they doing? And let's see how lesser known works fare in comparison. And let me just say, they not only fare in comparison, they surpass it. So, I guess you'll see that when we get there. Well, starting us off with the original LBP games, I have to mention one that I played recently that I really enjoyed by the name of Empty House. This game aims to tell a story, and it does it pretty well, with genuinely kind of spooky visuals at points, which, again, LittleBigPlanet is not a horror game or close to it, so it's really impressive what they were even able to do. But perhaps the story would be told better if I tried this in a more cinematic approach. So yeah, buckle up, I'm gonna try to tell the story of this level. You stop your car at a gas station to refuel, the only other person there being a worker, a really friendly old guy who seems really wary of the fact that you'll be visiting the house down the hill. You see, he tells you the spooky story of things he's seen around the house and how it's probably not a
a good idea to visit, but well, you being stubborn, you go anyway. The man, being a little bit scared of letting you go alone, does mention that there is a phone inside the house that you can use to call him, and that if anything happens, do not hesitate to call. As you explore the house, you notice various different oddities, from just broken down places that seem way too strange to a creepy figure hidden behind the fridge. After a while, things start becoming a lot more scary. You find more and more creepy symbols around the house. You could promise to yourself that you saw some ghost girl hanging around there. You feel freaked out, and so you try to call the old man again. But this time, he's no longer there. You get scared. You go back to your car and try to go back to the gas station, but the gate just won't open. No one is letting you leave. And so, as you drive back to your house, you start seeing it more clearly. The ghost girl, she's following you around, and you know that you need to do something about this if you're gonna survive. You head into the bedroom of the house, finding the halls covered in scratches and doodles, with the center point being this drawing of a monster that you cannot even recognize. And suddenly, the basement door starts to slam, and as you go to leave the bedroom, you meet her face to face and learn her story. You see, the secrets of the house is that years before, the woman that lived there had a fatal disease. Out of options, she decided to turn to the paranormal, summoning a demon with which she could barter. The demon offered her immortality, as long as the demon could take control of the woman's body. The woman, however, wasn't really keen on letting the devil take control of her, and so she formulated a plan. Once the deal was done, she was gonna lock her body in the basement. This way, even if the demon did take control of her body, it wasn't gonna be able to cause chaos to other people. And so, her immortality came in the form of a ghost, forever haunting the house, and her body is still locked in that basement to this day. Or, it should be. Until you came along. Whether you like it or not, your curiosity just unleashed a demon onto the world. Determined to make right by your decisions, you go and try to explore the now open basement of the house. Maybe you could do something to save these people after all, although when you get there, you're only met by a secret, endless tunnel that seems to go down to the pits of hell themselves. And then you hear it. The demon is upstairs causing chaos, and you follow him around the house until he seemingly gets sick of toying with you and tries to run after you. You run out of the house as fast as you can. You get in your car and you start trying to drive away. The entire house and the forest surrounding it seem to burn in a fire as you try to escape, finally reaching the gas station where you take a deep breath, thinking that you just escaped a demon. Although
Well, with that I should probably go into why I find this level so captivating. First of all, I obviously need to talk about the visuals, as despite the obvious limitations of the engine, it really does have an unnerving feeling that you'd want from any horror game you play. Especially at that end segment where the lights in the house all turn off entirely, that's really spooky. Especially in that last scene with the seemingly endless corridor with the lights slowly creeping in. That's really cool. Normally in LBP 1 and 2, you only have really 3 layers to build in with certain other segmented layers, but it's a really popular glitch that I think most level creators do to just glitch things outside of these layers to build perspective, even if the player can't really access them in the game. And I think it's really funny that I'm pretty sure a good reason for why we got 16 layers on LBP3 is because people were just so used to glitching past the layer limit, they just made it a feature. Another thing that I really appreciate about this level is the characters, of course being the big 3. The man in the gas station, or just the man in the gas as the game calls him, probably because of character limitations, the Ghost and the Demon. Now, the man in the gas station is one of the seemingly simplest character concepts imaginable, a friendly old guy that dies through the main villain. But I really do think his addition adds a really cute layer that most LVP levels don't have. The setup of being able to call him through the phone is surprisingly good, as it grounds the player in a sense of security before ripping it away when we see that he's no longer there on the other side. With finally seeing him one last time as he burns in the pits of hell, which adds a third layer to the character, making it feel like this character had a solid 3-act structure. And I have to say, obviously this is a bit funny as an adult, especially if you know where the DLC is from, because this is just a costume from the Halloween pack from LVP 1. But it does what it needs to do and it works with the constraints it has, so, you know, I can't fault it for that. Moving on to the Ghost Girl, I will say yes, her design is generic, so I don't really have much to say. But something I'd like to point out is that her constant appearing and disappearing before the final confrontation is actually pretty well made. It's a pretty good way to build suspense and build this mystery around the character before we learn her story later. Also, you know, small side note, her actually having X's for eyes is somewhat unnerving to me for some reason. I feel like it's the cartoony visual of a dead character having X's for eyes, mixed with the fact that most LVP costumes have this stitched appearance. I don't know, it just creeps me out. It's like a haunted doll. And finally, the main character that I actually wanted to talk about with this section, the Demon. Because genuinely, the Demon might be one of the coolest LVP level villains because of the setup behind it and how it's presented. Through the entire level, we barely see the Demon at all. Every time we actually see him being in the shadows. This is, at least in my opinion, genuinely brilliant and a horror technique that's been used in most, if not all, your favorite horror media. And I know, big words for an LVP horror monster, but bear with me, I just want to talk about this because I think it's a cool topic, okay? Never showing the monster in proper lighting makes it so the audience can get to feel what the monster actually looks like, with of course the audience imagination being able to come up with something a lot more personally scary than anything the actual designer can come up with. Mix that with the fact that our most direct look at the monster is a scribbled painting on the wall made by the Ghost, and you have a perfectly executed villain, with the drawing itself being perfectly just simple and not really showing us much, which just kind of adds to the mystery. And you know, I won't pretend that I came up with these ideas, right? The whole thing of not showing the full villain is something that's been used in, for example, Alien, and it's something that a lot of critics of these types of movies always come up to say. But you know a critique is good when you can apply it to other scenarios and it still fits, and I think this is one of those. On another side note, the Demon reminds me a lot of the Beast from Over the Garden Wall, which also has a very simple, almost childlike design with a shadowy body and 2 glowing eyes, and the antlers too. Maybe the level creator was inspired by Over the Garden Wall, but really, I'm just a sucker for this type of design, so I'll take what I can get. And yes, of course, all the characters only work the way they do because of the story of the level, which despite being, again, very cliche, it's just developed enough to carry the player through the level. Again, most of these LVP levels are played in less than an hour, so most of them only last about 10 minutes. So setting up a story quickly is something that you have to worry about if you want the level to stick with the player. This is something that levels that stick to pre-existing media don't have to worry about, but if you're trying to do something more original, there is going to be something of a hard time that you're going to have. But telling a story does have the detriment of, for example, this level doesn't have much on the gameplay side of things. It's more of a walking simulator where the story develops around you, which I personally don't have a problem with, as most mascot horror games nowadays just do that. But to each their own, I thought I'd mention it if you want something more gameplay oriented. But with that being said, yes, of course, I really enjoyed this level, and I wouldn't have talked about it if I didn't. It's actually one of my personal favorites. So, cool transition, go! You know, how about we take a little break and put down our controller? What if instead of playing horror levels, what if we could just watch horror movies? Well, you're in luck, because you can make entire movies inside of LittleBigPlanet, with of course horror movies being a big part of that. I'd love to give you a proper explanation on how it works, but really, it's something that I don't really have in my wheelhouse. If you want a video that's much more in-depth on the topic, you should watch I Tried Animating in LittleBigPlanet by Graham Apple. That video is not only really informative, but like, also really well animated. Like, yeah, please go check it out. But I can at least give you the basic explanation. Like, using in-game sequencers, you can create entire scripted scenes that play one after the other, basically becoming something similar to your average video editing timeline, either using materials to set the scene, camera tools to frame it, and finally using sackbots as your main actor, either typing out what they say in each scene into subtitles that play during the movie, or even have actual voice acting.
The audio you are listening to right now is being recorded inside of LittleBigPlanet 3. As you can see, it's compressed, to say the least. Now, this is recorded from a PlayStation 5, so imagine how much worse this would be in the original PlayStation 3 games. But despite this obvious limitation, people not only made cutscenes and dialogue, but entire in-engine movies, all voice-acted exactly like this.
Now, there are tons of movies I could talk about. In fact, Epic LPP Time has an entire playlist dedicated to them. But for the sake of simplicity, I decided that I'd take this opportunity to get to know my community better by watching these live. So how about we start with the actual first one we watched live, that being The Accident. Now, The Accident, made by Samurai09, is probably one of the most fun movies we watched that stream. Not that that's really out of the ordinary, considering that Samurai09 has an insane track record when it comes to making movies. They are absolutely one of the most well-known creators in the space, and for good reason, as they've created, like, entire full-fledged movie series inside of LittleBigPlanet. While this video centers on horror, I need to take a moment to mention Samurai09's series Ninja Cat, an entire movie trilogy, being 1 hour and 20 minutes, 2 hours, and another respectively. Basically meaning that they've made multiple feature-length movies inside of this engine. And after LittleBigPlanet, it didn't stop there. In fact, Ninja Cat just moved to a new engine. They just continued making Ninja Cat 3 in Dreams, the new game by Media Molecule, the original creators of LittleBigPlanet. And yeah, you can definitely tell that they're having fun making these movies in a less restrictive engine that allows them to, like, you know, properly animate fight scenes. But the fact that this started via LittleBigPlanet really does show how it was kind of a perfect starting point for any creative that wants to do something. Especially if they just simply lack the time and effort to properly make something elsewhere. Not that Samurai09's movies lack effort, by the way. They are full of it, and we are gonna see that very, very soon. And that degree of quality that we've come to expect from this creator absolutely also carries over to The Accident. Now, if you want a basic plot summary, our main character Jack was just driving back to his house with a present for his daughter, when, due to getting distracted with his phone, he crashed into a pedestrian, killing them instantly. Jack, in a moment of sheer panic, not wanting to face the consequences of his actions, decides to drag the body into the trunk of his car, driving back home with the body and trying to forget about it so he can be with his family. The next morning, however, the police come knocking on their door. But surprisingly enough, they were actually there to warn them about a dangerous murderer that escaped from prison. A man named John Poe, convicted of 3 consecutive life sentences. So yeah, overall, pretty bad guy. And also, of course, Jack makes the connection and realizes that the man he hit the day before was in fact this killer. And the worst part, unfortunately, it seems that this killer didn't exactly die during the car crash. Now Jack, his wife Tracy, and their deaf daughter Amy must somehow survive as this angered convict tries to track them down. And if that wasn't bad enough, it seems like this specimen might have a serious case of inhuman strength. And if that plot sounds fun, I can absolutely confirm it was. It might not have been the scariest thing in the world, but there was absolutely never a dull moment watching this live. Remember, kids, don't text while driving, or this will happen. What the fuck?
Work on the car later, you dummy. Your daughter's been waiting all day to see you.
She's British!
Haven't they heard the police?
he's spacing out. He's on Fent. The sound!
Hello to your daughter?
What? Did she say something?
Oh!
Present? Ah, crap. I left it in the car.
She's mute.
Last night, he escaped from the transfer bus while en route to a new prison.
Oh my.
Oh, that's gonna be the plot. He's still alive.
He was in the area. What?
Your hand. It's bleeding.
Huh? Oh, this isn't my blood.
Why would you?
Not your blood?
Why would you say that?
Huh? I mean, oh! It must be my blood. Ow!
Why would you say that?
Must have happened while working on the car.
Yeah, Jack. We need to make sure that Amy stays in her room. Oh, times like this, I wish she wasn't deaf.
Whoa! Whoa! Ableist mother. And still, that's not the worst thing she's done, because the worst thing she's done is be British.
Woman!
Whoa! Misogyny? And still, the worst thing he's done is marry a British woman. Oh shit! No shot. That's actually that's a really good scene. That was really well made.
Oh my god! Crazy! Come help me! Get me!
Ooh. They made different scenes from different perspectives. Yeah. More actually in chat. You make a very good point. For all of these scenes, every time they have a different perspective, they have to rebuild the entire set facing a different direction, because LittleBigPlanet 2 would not let you just like... So all of these different perspectives are different sets, rebuilding the exact same house from different perspectives. That is really impressive. This scene is kinda fucking awesome. This is actually so well made. He can run after a car? He's... Come on, dude! You can't be serious!
Put on your seatbelt.
Jack! What's going on?
We're going home.
Okay, that's kinda cold.
You guys okay?
What were you thinking? Oh God! Oh, home!
It doesn't matter. It's over. I hope our insurance covers this.
This is no time for jokes. He could be still alive.
Hold on. I need to get something important.
What? You've gotta be... After having an absolutely great time with the accident, we moved on to a few other smaller movies. From actual horror franchises like Scream or Friday the 13th, and a few other really cool smaller projects like Afraid 1 and 2, Clown, and Annabelle's Lullaby. However, one that absolutely stood out from the rest was Dead Waters by Christian Andrum. Now, the plot is simple. Our main characters, Jake, Shane, Chris, Brandon, and Eric, were all kidnapped at various nightclubs, waking up on a boat in the middle of the ocean with an explosive screwed onto their hand. Now they have to together not only find a way out, but also the reason why this is happening before the boat ends them one by one. And I'll try not to spoil it too much, because this movie is absolutely the most entertaining we watched. The characters absolutely stand out from each other, and over the 40-minute runtime, you genuinely grow attached to them and want to see them survive. Which of course makes it so much more impactful when the boat starts picking them out one by one. Oh my... Shane! No, Shane! Go, my goat! No! Someone save my goat! And if that wasn't enough, I absolutely need to point out that there's some genuine moments where the cinematography, like, legitimately just clicks. Like, I'm not even kidding. Some of these scenes are straight up kind of beautiful, which obviously is not what I expected when I was watching a movie made in LittleBigPlanet of all things. I legitimately think it's really fun for people who like this more, like, campy style of horror. Be careful though, it does show its age.
How about you two shut the hell up and stop acting like we're 2-year-olds?
I want to remind everyone, 2013, a different era. You do have to remember, this was made, like, more than 10 years ago, okay? The internet was a much different place. Okay, but please don't let that disincentivize you from watching it. It's a really fun viewing experience, especially if you're watching with friends or with a stream chat like I did. But honestly, I could spend hours here and I would not even scratch the surface of what this community is capable of. So yeah, think of these two examples as kind of an appetizer of a much bigger bigger iceberg of a topic. A topic that honestly I would not mind revisiting one day if interest is there for it. Honestly, I just really love Little Big Planet so much and I'll take any excuse to talk about it again, so take that as you will. But if I'm gonna be honest, I'm sorry. I've been beating around the bush a little bit. Don't get me wrong, I love each and every project I've talked about so far. But you know, for a game like Little Big Planet, it's, there's something missing when people make levels about creepypastas. I mean, Jeff the Killer is great, but Little Big Planet is all about imagination. I want to see something uniquely LBP. And yeah, things like The Empty House or Chicken Man are great, but I want something that only works on LBP, something that is so intrinsically LBP that it could not be taken anywhere else and it would not work if you tried. And I really wish we had something like that. I mean, it's not like we have some kind of, I don't know, Sackboy.exe. So, I should probably explain what you just watched. That was Sackboy.exe. Not only that, it's also the first level in a series that would be later known as Sackboy.UNZIPPED. And truthfully, this series was the reason I made this video in the first place, having only remembered that there's other horror stuff in LBP when I was later doing research. At least to me, this is the most classic example of LBP horror, to the point where even to this day, I still think about it from time to time. And from time to time, I mean like almost every week. Yeah, legitimately, in recent times, it's turned into a kind of hyperfixation of sorts, which I guess it's up to you if it's deserving of that or not. But without further ado, I should probably explain how this section of the video will work, because, you probably realize that this is structured a lot differently from how we've been doing things since the beginning. Firstly, I will show footage of the level in action, then explaining why I love each level after you've had time to watch it for yourself. But to make sure that the video isn't just a lot of unedited footage, I decided to add some voice acting to certain scenes, as the levels all tell their story mostly through written text, so I thought that this would be a cute little detail to add. That being said, yeah, I am not a voice actor, so hopefully it's still entertaining to watch. That being said, let's get into this first level, which you already saw. So of course, as you know, the level starts as a normal LBP level, having the song Left Bank 2 playing in the background, and it's, yeah, one of the most iconic LBP songs in the franchise. Unfortunately, yes, the song is copyright claimed, so instead of playing the original, I have to play a MIDI version. Things only really start to get distorted in the level when you go past this sign, and remember this sign as it's basically a motif for Sackboy.UNZIPPED that you'll see repeated over and over again. And right after, you're gonna see the arrows, which are also a motif of the characters that you're gonna see repeated all throughout all of the levels, so keep that also in your mind. Now, I'm not gonna re-explain everything you already saw in the level, but I will point out my favorite parts. Because really, why sit here explaining when you already got to watch yourself, right? Might as well focus on the good parts that I really want to talk about and share with you. For example, one thing that I really want to point out that I love is actually how immature the levels are when it comes to horror. Let me explain. You see, to me, I always saw Sackboy as this kind of representation of childhood imagination, you know, being overly creative, joyful, and overall just really fun to be around. So having what is basically Sackboy's evil counterpart also be childlike in its edginess towards horror just kind of fits to me, to be honest. Now, of course I know this wasn't intentional, or at least I'd be really surprised if it was, but there's something really fun and charming about how creatively cruel Unzipped can get. And yes, I will be calling the character Unzipped instead of Sackboy.exe because the name just kind of fits Sackboy a lot better, you know, having the zipper. You know, how you unzip a folder to access the exe inside, you'd unzip Sackboy to access the exe, and it's just really cool to me. Anyway, from making you walk a bridge of fire with launch pads that activate and deactivate as you try to go through, to making you go through a parkour section when you need to step on spikes to continue, and even that last section with the ticking bomb, everything just seems to be made not to actually hurt the player. I know this is getting into headcanon territory, but to me it always seemed like Unzipped wasn't really wanting to hurt the player that much and just kind of making him uncomfortable, which kind of fits the lore because Unzipped seems to be talking to the player and not the vessel that the player is controlling, so killing the vessel really wouldn't help him that much. And speaking of vessels, the constant appearance of other Sackboys that grab at you and then disappear, that just seems to support the theory that these are all vessels that were forgotten by the player. And yes, I am aware that this is literally just the plot of Deltarune. Friend inside me is actually Sackboy.exe. Toby Fox was a Sackboy.NZ. Now, as for the main narrative of the level, I think it's pretty simple. From the dialogue, it's clear to me that this is a story about the player's vessel getting tired of being controlled, forced to play through levels, dying, respawning like nothing happened. Now being able to make a level themselves, having control for once, really. Probably being threatened that you came along to visit because that means he'll lose control again. Yes, I am aware this is nothing groundbreaking and nothing you haven't seen before, but surprisingly, as the series goes on, I do feel like it manages to differentiate itself from other similar EXE concepts. And also, quick side note, this actually does remind me of something that the LBP1 narrator says in the tutorial of the game. There's this really weird joke they make about how they'd like to say that no sack person was harmed when the player respawns, with the joke being that they actually are. Also, they kind of specify that another sack person appears at the checkpoint, which kind of confirms that every time Sackboy dies, another one is made.
Now, occasionally you're going to get stuck. Then press and hold the action button. We'd like to say no little sack person is harmed during the playing of LittleBigPlanet. We'd like to say that. Anyway, another cute little sack person will appear at the last activated checkpoint.
Anyway, yeah, that's kind of besides the point. I doubt the maker of this level was even thinking of that when they made it, but it does feel important for me to mention. Now, with that out of the way, let's see the consequences of our actions as we fall deep into the second level, which is titled, Do Not Play This Level. So let's disregard that and move on. Hey, it's ItsKynn again. Remember at the beginning of the video when I told you that this video was left mangled and corrupted and had to be restitched back together? Well, you probably already noticed a lot of problems thus far, and I really want to thank you for sticking around anyway, but I don't exactly come with good news. You see, this final section on Sackboy.exe/unzipped is the one that got corrupted the most, and honestly, it's been kind of a mess trying to stitch this one back together. But yeah, this video has been on my hard drive for long enough. I just want to put it out there, and I hope you still enjoy. Alright, let's get back to it, shall we?
It's a trap. It's waiting for you. Leave before it's too late.
You shouldn't have done that.
So, level 2 of the Unzipped Saga, which despite not having much when it comes to new lore, absolutely delivers in aesthetics and concept. So, first of all, you might have realized that I actually died at the start of the level when I went looking where I shouldn't have. What I want to note specifically being how the level seemingly adapts to a second playthrough, taunting you with a back for more as you do so. While obviously this is really creepy and adds to the overall feeling of the level, I do have to kind of break the illusion because I want to talk about the Memorizer tool. The Memorizer is a tool that was added originally in the DC level pack, basically allowing level creators to register data to whether the level has been played before, and even how far along on the level the player was. On the original level pack, this was used to create a hub between all the levels that you could go into, but obviously here it's used to basically call out the player, which is really fun. Now, this technique is going to be used a lot during these levels, and I really enjoy it, because it really does add to the whole feeling of Unzipped not only being a character, but this game-breaking entity that knows you as a player. Also, while I was recording footage for the section, I found something kind of creepy, at least to me, especially because it was totally unintentional. You see, Beacon didn't have all of the levels from the Unzipped series, so for certain levels I needed to switch to Refresh. I already said that I didn't really have a preference between the two servers, and that's still true, so to me switching wasn't that big of a deal. I just needed footage and went somewhere I could get it. Now, something I wasn't expecting was that the level data actually transferred over from one server to the other, which to me was kinda scary since these levels were re-uploaded by entirely different people on different servers. Of course, with foresight, I know that this is because the data is stored locally and not on the server, but it was still somewhat unnerving how, despite not only playing a level from a different uploader on an entirely different server, Unzipped still somehow knew I had played before. The best part about this is that this was entirely unintentional. The Unknown One, the original creator of Sackboy.exe, obviously didn't expect it to be re-uploaded later on. They expected it to be available on their profile on the original server. So something that was entirely unintentional years later created a new layer of how powerful Unzipped is, and I think that's just kind of cool. I don't know, just a throwaway thought. Now, while we're on the subject of level design, there is something I want to mention about how the level design itself kind of gives Unzipped an unmistakable identity. As you play the levels, you'll quickly come to associate basic cardboard textures with Unzipped, which of course acts perfectly when compared to the average LBP scenery. When you see any material that isn't cardboard or something similar, it instantly feels refreshing. This is used in the level to great effect right at the beginning, be it through the rough transition from a grassy field with flowers to the monotone grayish cardboard, or having the immersion of the landscape broken as you see a vent leading down to a cardboard abyss. Which kind of leads us perfectly to talking about the narrative. In the last level, I talked about how I felt like Unzipped was toying with the player. It becomes even clearer here. Unzipped deliberately creates rules knowing that the player will break them, even taunting you with said rules once again exactly where he knows you have to use them. I think the only rule that ended up not using throughout the entirety of the level was the one about grabbing, but I'm pretty sure this is more of a fault of the level design than anything that impacts the story, so you know, let's move on. Then there is what is, to me, the main coolest reveal of the level, that being of a maybe second character, talking in a different font from the one that Unzipped usually uses. Now, personally, I think this is just, once again, Unzipped toying with us, changing up the font that he uses just to give us a false sense of hope, just for us to then turn back and then get immediately trapped and then killed. That being said, it seemed like this was maybe the introduction of a second character, likely another abandoned vessel that also talks via text. Maybe like Unzipped, but one that isn't vengeful. And I mean, we are shown a lot of other discarded Sackboys that are just laying around everywhere, both dead and alive, so it's not out of the question that one of them might have become its own entity, using the little power they have to warn us about Unzipped before, of course, Unzipped catches them and the player. I really don't know which of these is correct, but honestly, both options sound really cool to me, so I'd be totally down for both. That being said, I do really love how this level works to establish what we already know further. When it lacks in perhaps new, meaningful ideas about the character, it makes up with cool ideas that make you properly familiar with what he's capable of, which will make it a lot more effective when those conventions are broken later on. And by later on, I mean like the level directly after this, which is also my personal favorite. So finally, let's break the last rule and follow Unzipped where he leads us, that being the next level, titled Play, Create, Die. Quite the edgy twist on LBP's tagline, Play, Create, Share, but I already told you I like the edge these levels have, so let's get into it. So, Play.Create.DIE, my so-called favorite level. Now, to properly explain why I love this level so much, I think I need to dissect it a bit further than I perhaps did with the others. But really, I do really love this level, so I want to kind of talk about every aspect of it, so I guess we'll just jump into it. So, starting us off with, well, the start, this visual. The rope dangling above a pit of spikes with the word START written on a box as the player is stuck inside. Only for the silence to be broken by the sound of a party horn as Unzipped drops us into the proper start of the level. This kind of reads as Unzipped maybe becoming a little bit more confident, you know, knowing that he has you in the palm of his hands and can basically put you through anything he wants. He has full control. You know, this becomes even more apparent with the section right after, right? As he tells you to follow the arrows before showing you this. You know, in the other two levels before this one, we have kind of always seen the arrows as a way to show us either where to go or where Unzipped wants us to go, which subconsciously kind of establishes this safety around them. You know, if you're lost, you know you can always just follow the arrows. To me, this kind of feels like Unzipped is just having fun, clearly taking joy in seeing you not be sure exactly what to do, perhaps even being more powerful than the last time we saw him. And the seemingly new power is even more well established right after, as he'll go and destroy what, if you've played the story mode, you will quickly realize is the start of the game from LBP2. Now, in the actual start of the game, you would stand on that hill and then everything would get sucked up by the Negativitron, but here it's different, you could say, which really just goes to show again how much control he really has now. And I'm sorry, but right after there's another thing I really want to talk about, not giving you a second to process what just happened. He drops you through several copies of the gate from the start of the first level, immediately asking you sarcastically if something is wrong. And yeah, I will reiterate, these callbacks are absolutely brilliant and go to show just how much he's aware of you as a player and what you've experienced before. Now, this gate, I should probably talk about it. In the actual game, this is the no Sackboy sign. It represents that no other player can join past that point. It was very much designed for levels that would otherwise break if another player were to try to join in the middle, basically just making sure everything works in order. Now, in the context of Unzipped, I do feel like these signs obviously take a much different meaning, especially with how many there are. To me, these symbolize something more along the lines of this point of no return, which of course makes sense because, hey, it's the first thing you walk through in the first level, leading to all of this mess even happening. You know, I just think it's so cool that they're actually using the gameplay mechanics of the game in order to tell the story, right? Like, it makes it so uniquely LittleBigPlanet that it really couldn't be done anywhere else. It needed to be. Anyway, back on the arrows, yeah, they changed gravity now, that's cool. cool. Now, I thought I'd mention that this is actually a material that players got access to via the Muppets level pack, which, yeah, makes you stick to walls. And this, coupled with the fact that you can just adjust the camera, and yeah, it makes it seem like all of gravity's changed instead of just you, which, yeah, really cool way to use the materials at your disposal to make something unique. Something else that I'd mention about this material that really doesn't show on gameplay footage is that the control buttons are also flipped, which means that, for example, if you're upside down, right is going to be left and left is going to be right, and this leads to a lot of confusion if you're constantly changing directions, which you do a lot in this level, and it's disorienting, and that's kind of good. It really adds to the level, to be honest. Well, moving on, we continue, and yeah, it really does seem like Unzipped may have lost his patience for good, even changing his design with his corrupted look as time goes on. We see on the walls these pictures of him, and his face is growing these red veins or stitch lines, culminating with him throwing us at a wall and, by his own words, making us start from the beginning. And you know, maybe the fact that you kept playing and you didn't get scared is really upsetting him, like he's throwing a tantrum, basically. I don't know, just food for thought, I guess. But the fact is, we go to level 1 and wow, is it kind of nostalgic already. You know, there's something really cool and unnerving about being dropped here again. You know, the plain background, the arrows, the score bubbles, everything just seems so peaceful. And again, it does seem like Unzipped somewhat lost his patience, as if we go back and attempt to play our little song, he'll just jump scare us and force us to stop. Like, he's so angry he doesn't even have time to play the song. He just wants to get this over. And yeah, he knows that we know exactly where he is. The exact place in level 1 that he was before, allowing whatever dark creature that lives inside there to finally come to the surface. Something even more powerful than we've seen before. It has full control. And it seems like this new version of Unzipped really isn't here to play around, as he tries to kill us almost immediately. And yeah, of course we find a way to escape, but he really doesn't like that. He roars loudly in anger. It's something that we kind of haven't seen before. He's completely losing his temper now. And as we reach our trusty pod, ready to go back to the safety of our little level hub, it destroys it, sinking us deeper into what I can only assume is the entity's true domain. Now, I opened this section with saying that this level is uniquely special to me, and so what do I mean by that? Well, firstly, there's the use of LittleBigPlanet locations in the level, which in my opinion, of course, unites the story a lot better than the levels before it did. I'm a sucker for levels that reference the main story mode, you know, makes them feel less disjointed, more of a natural part of the universe. You know, something about not hiding what the game is actually meant to be, and yes, in this level in particular, also just makes the threat feel grander. Then, of course, the callbacks. I'm also a sucker for callbacks to other levels, especially when it's either to put a twist on something familiar or just because of how eerie it can be to see something through a new lens. Now, of course, my favorite part of the level has to be this escalation. Having Unzipped go from just a mischievous little trickster with a twisted sense of humor to a legitimate threat as he loses his patience is something I didn't know I needed until I saw it. You know, honestly, one thing that you really don't see with at least this era of EXE concepts is an actual character arc. Yeah, a lot of the EXEs from this era just kind of fall into this category of all-powerful beings that never are really in danger. Something that I feel like Sackboy.UNZIPPED manages to at least break a little bit, even if, of course, it does fall into the trap that a lot of these others do. But I do think that it's really cool that this character arc really does impact even the level design, as the traps go from these intricate puzzles to just a room with fire. It really does feel like the character's changing in a fundamental way. But with that being said, yeah, of course, I have yapped about this level for way too long, so maybe we should just move along, right? But if you want to learn more about the character arc of Unzipped, you are actually in luck, because this next level is a prequel. And yeah, the title of the next level is Error in File, Sackboy.exe Origins, what I can only assume is the first event in the timeline. Well, if before Unzipped was at his most evil and powerful, then maybe this prequel will shed a light on how he became that way before all of this happened. So I guess let's just get into it and find out exactly how Unzipped came to be.
Take away from me. I will no longer serve as a puppet. The player is ruthless.
Escape where you can. Why do you follow? I have nothing for you. I wish to be alone. I'm angry and scared. There's something odd about you. Are not like the rest of us.
Alright, so honestly, I don't have as much to say about this level as I did with level 3, but that doesn't mean that it's lacking in any way. In fact, for its small runtime, it does really carry across everything that it's set out to do perfectly. Alright, to start us off, how different Unzipped behaves at the start when he thinks you're a lost vessel just like him. He's still very much portrayed as the same character we know him to be, which is good, but even his traps are more geared towards keeping us away than actually killing us or even being that malicious. Another thing that I noticed that I think is really cool and I want to point out is how close he gets to the player in a lot of these scenes. He still wants to keep you away, but he doesn't seem as on edge as he is in the main level, which is actually a really cool way to build on his character without using dialogue. This is the type of storytelling that I really do appreciate that these levels have. Moving along though, since I of course mentioned this in the other levels as well, yes, I will mention it here too, the wall jump you see in this section is also a tool obtained through the DC level pack, as we talked about before. And its use in this level is kind of fun because of course you're not supposed to know you have it, so you think you're stuck for a bit before realizing that yeah, there's an actual way for you to get out. And while we're here, the scene right after with Sackboy peeking out from behind the LittleBigPlanet logo tree is a really solid visual that I really love, and I think it kind of represents everything about Unzipped and his saga perfectly, and it could even be used as a cover for the entire series. Speaking of which, you might have noticed that I've edited this scene slightly. Yeah, in the original, the scene starts with this big floating shout-out, which obviously, while really cute, does kind of break the immersion. Now, these shout-outs are actually present in most of these levels, but normally they are hidden in Easter egg-specific rooms. And that I actually think is a really cool idea and really cute. Of course, the problem is when you put it in the middle of a pretty pivotal scene for the level, you know? But you know, at the end of the day, these levels were made by kids, and I'm not getting upset they wanted to shout out a friend or something. So, moving along. Alright, so moving along, we get to what is, in my opinion, the best scene in this level, that being the respawn scene. You know, it's such a smart use of the mechanics of LittleBigPlanet, and it's, again, what makes these levels so unique. The idea that Unzipped would find out if you're a player or not based on if you're able to open your poppet and respawn is, like, perfect. And you know, it's also a great way to just escalate the situation. It really gives us the context that we needed to know why Unzipped hated us so much. Going from someone who was just scared and confused to someone who feels they got tricked into being vulnerable by the exact person that hurt them before. You can really feel the anger behind that last confrontation, and I really love it. It really builds on his one and true motivation of just wanting to be left alone, but of course you as a player keep tormenting him by joining over and over and over again. But as I said, Much smaller and more concise level, but with a lot of very important elements, especially for the characterization of our main antagonist. Speaking of which, we were kinda left on this cliffhanger after being dropped into the level 3 abyss of Unzipped's one and true realm. The next level is called Corrupt Data in File and starts us off directly where we left off in level 3. Well, that being said, let's go and explore one of the most ambitious and perhaps a little out of place levels in the series, but I'll get to that when we get there. For now, I hope you're ready for a boss fight.
You found me. But corruption has found you. How dare you cause me pain? Your next meeting will be your last.
Alright, so level 5 is definitely one of the strongest and most ambitious levels in the series, and I say that not only because of the boss fight at the end, but also what leads up to it. Before this section started, I did say that I found this level slightly out of place, and that comes down to how this level plays a lot more like a normal platformer level compared to how the others did, where displaying the visuals and the story was more important than any actual gameplay. Also, of course, there's this very sharp change in the the visuals from what Unzipped's identity is known for, as despite him being quite creative, I never imagined him to be the type to build an entire factory filled with torture devices and screaming things in cages. And that's not to say that the set piece isn't good. In fact, I absolutely love how everything in the level builds up to the final confrontation and shows you just a bit more of Unzipped's new pet, with first seeing those piercing eyes to the tentacles with buzzsaws being pulled up as if the creature is climbing up the level before you meet him face to face. Speaking about this meeting, I really like how this level somewhat builds on Unzipped again, first being taunted with finding where he is at the start of the level, and at the end, not only meeting him, but for what I think is the first time in the series, properly talking face to face. Which, and I know I've said this in literally every level, but again, builds on Unzipped's confidence, now kinda seeming like this culmination of the confidence he's earned in the past levels, first needing to run away from you and talking via walls, but now just looking you dead in the eyes and saying whatever he wants to say, finally unleashing the creation that is gonna scare you away once and for all. So yeah, let's stop beating around the bush any longer and talk about corruption, Unzipped's creation. Now, I'm sure that some of you reacted to this reveal with something like, really? A dragon? And I totally get that, it's somewhat unexpected. But what if I told you that I definitely like this choice and think it fits with the character that I've been building over the playthrough? Which, I know, kind of a headcanon, and I'm not sure if this is canonically accurate, but I'll just say it. Something that I've said countless times already is that I see Unzipped as, once again, an entity that resembles that of a child in maturity, which obviously mirrors Sackboy and how he represents childhood imagination. So let's do a quick test and put ourselves in his position. If you were a kid, what do you imagine when you think of a scary and cool monster? Well, some of you already know where I'm going with this, but unironically, a dragon is one of the first things you would probably imagine. Especially that cool factor of adding tentacles and buzzsaws. It's just over the top in the best way possible. And yeah, over the top. It is over the top, sure, but it's also exactly what a creature made of pure imagination and creativity would do. And yeah, they'd probably be really proud of this creation, hence why you get so upset when you finally kill it. Oh, and by the way, before we move on, I have to say that the Creatinator tool being used in this level, basically the thing that lets you shoot out basically anything the player desires. Yeah, it's not really working how it should, but I assure you that this is a problem with my emulator, and that in the original version it was working perfectly, so no fault of the level. But anyways, getting back on track, at this point in the saga, we have basically destroyed everything that Unzipped has ever wanted. We basically just entered his domain, invaded the little privacy he had, ignored every attempt that he put in place to scare us away, and now even killed his pet. Which makes it not that surprising when he finally snaps and tells us that our next meeting will be our last. And he isn't lying, as the next level is the final level of the Unzipped saga, being a final boss fight. Not against the pet or any of his traps, just him. Actual Unzipped himself. So, get ready everyone. One last time, let's fight Sackboy.unzipped.
Why must you always run? I only wish to unzip and eat you. from that Sackboy and Zipper, you're nothing but a snack to me! Not so fast!
So before we start analyzing the final fight, I want to start off with a quick side tangent about the music used for this section. Now, I knew I needed some sort of background track to make this moment have the right sense of finality, especially since the original level just plays this over and over. Yeah, it's the type of track that maybe you don't notice while you're playing, but just watching someone play, this will sear into your head, and I'll be honest, it's not the best. So I turned to my usual playlists to find the right track, but honestly, I couldn't find anything that really fit the vibe, both in and out of the LittleBigPlanet OST. That is, until I found the project Disc of Horrors. Now, as someone who's very much not familiar with the FNF scene, I was surprised to say the least that there was a mod being developed for such a niche thing as Sackboy.exe. In fact, there's multiple mods dedicated to all sorts of LBP related horror levels, like, oh hey, here's Chicken Man again. But going back specifically to Disc of Horrors, I was even more surprised when I listened to the song, and it was actually really good and really fit the character. The track you heard during the final level is called Prologue, and it sounds exactly like a song about Unzipped should sound. So yeah, if you're into FNF projects, please go check out Disc of Horrors. It seems like a really cool mod, and honestly, I'm hyped to see what they do in the future. But with that being said, I think we should probably go back to the actual topic at hand, right? The final level of Unzipped. So, Sackboy.Unzipped. What a wonderful level. I'm serious. This level is beautiful, a display of everything we've seen since the start of the saga, and honestly, it's hard to even choose where to begin. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about gameplay, as despite it being a relatively simple boss fight mechanically, it's a perfect end to a LittleBigPlanet creepypasta story. Pulling on a zipper on the chest of an entity to reveal their true self is something that is uniquely LittleBigPlanet, as obviously it's not easy to find another character that also has a zipper as such a prominent part of their design. I really love this. It's surprisingly somewhat common for modern creepypasta to disregard the original game when making the main monster, which kinda bugs me to be honest. I mean, at that point I'd just rather people do their fully original story instead of being limited by the constraints of the pre-established franchises you're basing your story on. But hey, at least in my opinion, I can safely say that during the saga, Unzipped has definitely not fallen into this trap, with even the final boss fights mechanic playing directly into what makes Sackboy different from other gaming mascots. Even the final chase after the zipper is broken, which is a pretty standard chase scene, is invocative of LittleBigPlanet's history. As in every single mainline game, be it LBP 1, 2, or 3, one thing that they all share is a boss fight where Sackboy has to platform while getting chased by a large entity as part of their narrative. And speaking of narrative, following the events of the last level, this final level starts with a really fun sequence, showing us the start of the first level one last time before Unzipped immediately interrupts it, with a promise that this time he gets us once and for all. And immediately the stage is set, quite literally, with a gigantic Unzipped and a hope that this truly is the end. Something I absolutely adore is that each stage of this boss fight is a direct reference to the various different points in the story. We start with a level design that should be very familiar to us at this point: the gray skies, the monotone cardboard, and the looming figure of Unzipped, looking relatively put together. The Unzipped from the start of our adventure, when he still had the patience to toy with us and took great joy in scaring us away. When we pull down the zipper, however, the character unravels, both literally and metaphorically, becoming the Unzipped that we recognize starting with level 3. The prominent buzzsaws, the red and gray color scheme, and of course the more twisted and stitched together look for when we genuinely started becoming an annoyance to this creature. Getting under his skin. And speaking of getting under his skin, we once again pulled down his zipper to reveal yet another deeper level. The first thing you'll notice about this design is its more beast-like traits. Its deformed hands and its wagging reptile tail. This immediately reminds us of Unzipped's pet Corruption from the previous level. With the more we think about it, the more we realize what really happened. Either to avoid his pet's death or just out of grief, Unzipped has now merged himself with his creation, whether willingly or not, as a way for him to keep both of them alive, or perhaps how he misses his pet simply changed its physical appearance as a consequence. Whatever the case is, when has grief and killing a pet stopped us as a player, right? Once again, we pull down his zipper and proceed into the great unknown. Unzipped then reveals his true form, one with a prominently broken zipper, finally making himself truly unzipped once and for all. Now, let's analyze this final form for a bit, because whether intentionally or just me filling in the gaps with my own imagination, I really love this final monster. One thing that immediately stands out to me for this character is its dialogue. "You're nothing but a snack to me," accompanied with a difference in gameplay for the final chase. To me, and trust me, I know that this is probably a reach, I like to think of this final form as a true monster, so to speak. The previous forms were still Sackboy, and as we unzip this character and remove layer after layer after layer, we are fundamentally stripping this character of its traits, until the one thing we have left is a bumbling monster with a simple goal of eating the player. Perhaps you could analyze this as Unzipped becoming just what a kid would imagine a truly evil monster to be, one that only destroys and eats up people. To me, this could be seen as symbolizing that, for example, when you strip down the layers of a character, you get its fundamental traits, in this case, a monster. And as we run away from this monster, we finally get to a crevice where he can't reach us, thinking of ourselves as safe before the level ends once and for all, with Unzipped catching us and eating us. And with that, the Sackboy.Unzipped saga finally comes to an end. A story of a scared kid, stuck making levels in order to scare away a player, who seems more entertained than anything by his attempts. One that we take pleasure in irritating until everything that's left of him is a bumbling, angry mess that wants to kill us once and for all. A creature that, honestly, is probably happy that the servers are finally down. At least now the players can't hurt him ever again. He's truly alone and he's happy about that. Or at least he hoped that would be the case, before the custom servers woke him back up. Us players really can't take the hint and just never come back, can we? But at least that's my interpretation of the story. Again, this is a story that was most likely written and created entirely by kids. Saying that I'm looking too deep into things is an understatement. At this point, I'm probably reaching the Earth's core with how much I'm looking for themes that don't really exist. Or maybe they do, if you agree with my interpretation, but isn't that the beauty of LittleBigPlanet either way? Someone shared a level they created for others to play, and for people like me to play it as a kid and immediately become attached to it, carrying the memory of it until adulthood and, over time, growing their own interpretations for this character. The main message of LittleBigPlanet: play, create, share. One that keeps true even after the game is gone. And sticking with that message, I'm just happy I got to share the Unzipped saga with you, as we finally reached its true conclusion. Yep, this is the end. There's nothing more. Okay, so... Okay, you know how I've been classifying these levels as a saga? Well, that isn't on accident, because technically there are more levels in this universe, although I personally consider these a different collection altogether. In fact, the next level, Beta File Deception, goes right back into the pre-established lore, even having itself a new antagonist to go with it, a gas mask-wielding second entity that seems to have somewhat of a rivalry with our pre-established Unzipped. Okay, so I don't plan to go into detail about the second saga, but I do want to mention that the gas mask design for the second antagonist may seem plain at first, but is actually really smart if you know your LittleBigPlanet item lore. The costume being used here is called the Bug Blaster, an exclusive costume that was given to players for finding major bugs inside of the LittleBigPlanet game. Yeah, I don't need to flex or anything, but I do have the Bug Blaster. I also have the Beta Vest, the Core Cap, and the Price Crown, so maybe put your Gucci and Supreme shit down. It doesn't mean anything right here. I have the real ice. But yeah, jokes aside, you can probably guess that this antagonist probably has a connection with patching out bugs and glitches, which kind of already tells you what kind of narrative this is gonna be and how it aligns with Unzipped. Or at least that's what I've been able to surmise. I could be wrong, but that's as far as I'm willing to go into analysis for now. You see, not only has this section gone on for long enough, but honestly, the original saga are the levels I really wanted to share, as they are the ones I remember from my childhood. Plus, I'm pretty sure that this saga has gone unfinished, and due to the server's state right now, I don't think it's ever gonna get finished, unfortunately. But alas, I wouldn't mind revisiting the topic in the future, but for now, that's it for Unzipped. I loved it, I really do, and I hope you do too now. Now, does anyone know how to get out of here? I'm kinda stuck, anyone? Alright, so, no more fake outs, no more secret arcs, no more Unzipped. This is it. The final section of the video. Not talking about a level or a specific theme, but LittleBigPlanet horror as a whole. No. You know what? Scratch that. LittleBigPlanet as a whole. Obviously, I tend to focus on horror. I mean, could you blame me? That's what my channel focuses on, but in all honesty, I won't pretend like this wasn't just an excuse to tell people about LBP. It's a game that is unimaginably important to me, one that I've been a fan of for close to 18 years now. A game that has such a stronghold on my childhood that I can't imagine what kind of person I'd be without it. LittleBigPlanet is the reason I love creating, the reason I have a drive for sharing my projects with others, the reason I'm making videos like these in the first place. And LBP horror? Yeah, that's definitely the origin of why I love horror so much. Everything ties back to LBP. I legitimately think there doesn't exist a single facet of my personality that I couldn't somehow tie back to this game. And I'm not alone in that regard. There are countless other people for whom this game means a lot. And honestly, one of my best memories I've had recently has to be going back and replaying these levels with the custom servers. It's not like it was before. I don't think it'll ever be, but I'm honestly glad that I got to play this game with friends again. Friends that miss LittleBigPlanet, and yes, more specific to the video's theming, the LBP horror scene. I'll let them tell you that themselves.
In the time that I've known Kyn, I've realized that when it comes to LBP horror, I really missed out. There are plenty of great levels out there, but growing up all I ever really did was play Jeff the Killer with one of my friends. Plus, for some salt in the wound, Kyn also made me realize that the Jeff the Killer I played wasn't even the original. I grew up with the fake copy of the only horror level I ever really played. I'd be a bit more sad about all that, but honestly in the long run I think I'm better off. Getting to play through these levels and experience them for the first time with Kyn and our friends has been super fun, and I've had a great time getting to play through all the levels that I missed out on back in the day.
As for me, I guess I'll finish this video off by telling you how much I love this game in the best way I know how. A very personal story about how I met LittleBigPlanet. The year was 2008. I was 4 years old and sat in the back of my dad's car. He had work to do and couldn't leave me home alone, so I went with him. He's an engineer and was called to do a repair at someone's house. We got there, and as a way to keep me from getting bored, the house's owner let me play on his PS3, putting the disc of a new game that had come out that he thought I'd enjoy, LittleBigPlanet. I played a bit. Even though I was 4 years old, I distinctly remember doing the tutorial and going through the first section of the gardens, reaching the seesaw section before my dad dad finished his work and we had to go home. I don't know what my dad saw in that moment. I probably looked away from the console with eyes like that of a whining dog, because only a month later, I now had a PS3 with a copy of LittleBigPlanet of my own. We weren't a wealthy family, especially not wealthy enough to afford an entire new console on a whim, but that moment I think my dad knew that something was different, and well, he was right. The year is 2009. We're going on vacation. My only form of entertainment is a PSP with LittleBigPlanet on it. I play until the only thing left to do is challenge myself with acing every level or trying to break out of bounds. I was obsessed. It was pretty clear at this point. The year is 2011. LittleBigPlanet 2 releases and I'm immediately fixated. I spend every single evening after school going online and playing levels. I wonder where the people I talk to are now. I hope they're all doing good. LittleBigPlanet Horror starts getting popular. I get so scared by a Jeff the Killer animation that I can't sleep for 2 days straight. But hey, who needs sleep when you can play LBP 2, right? The year is 2012 and LittleBigPlanet Vita came out, and I didn't have the console, so I had to beg my cousin to let me borrow his console for the summer. I completed the entire game in less than a week. The same year, LittleBigPlanet Karting released, and I was already a big fan of Mod Nation Racers, so LBPK was right up my alley. Little did I know that both games were actually way more related to each other than I originally assumed. The year is 2014. LittleBigPlanet 3 comes out and I am fascinated. The game is a bit buggy, but I'm able to look past it. I mean, LittleBigPlanet is back and I'm gonna play all of it. The year is 2015 and the Journey Home DLC releases, a conclusory collection of levels to celebrate the full history of LittleBigPlanet. I wonder if this DLC means that LBP 3 is ending, but whatever, I'm hopeful for the future of the franchise. The year is 2020 and Sackboy: A Big Adventure releases. It doesn't have any creation tools, or any sort of UGC for that matter, you know, the whole point of LittleBigPlanet, but still, it is a fun 3D platformer, right? I'm sure that this is just a detour and that LittleBigPlanet will be back soon. The year is 2021 and the servers for LBP 1 and 2 are shut down. The end of an era, but it made sense to me. I mean, those games were old and only available on the PS3. Besides, all the levels are still playable on LBP3 for the PS4, right? So no harm, no foul, it's fine. The year is 2024. LittleBigPlanet 3 is shut down. 10 million community-created levels are gone. Didn't even give us time to archive them either, just gone overnight. As silly as it sounds, I legitimately cry at this news. Wonder if LBP is really coming to an end. The year is still 2024, and LBP 3 and all of its DLC gets delisted off store shelves for good. The entire LittleBigPlanet franchise is gone, it's like it never even existed. The same year, Sackboy: A Big Adventure gets its last DLC, a free costume that turns Sackboy into Astrobot. That's fitting. Now, why did I tell you this? Well, so you understand how much this franchise means to me. I don't have a good way to end this video, I never did. I guess for all the imagination and creativity that LBP gave me, I don't think I have a creative or imaginative way to say goodbye. Who knows? Maybe one day I'll have the right set of words to really describe how I feel. But for now, all I can really do is quote myself. The first video on this channel. No matter how cringy it is, it's still exactly how I feel. So let me quote myself. Thank you. Thank you, LBP horror creators. Thank you, LBP community. Thank you, Media Molecule, Sumo Digital, Tarsier, Cambridge, United Front, you name it. Thank you for my childhood, and thank you for the ability to play, create, and share. And most of all, thank you, LittleBigPlanet. And so, finally, the big one, the LittleBigPlanet video comes out. You have no idea how much of a fight it was to get this video out there. My editing software was basically working against me, you know, the video was always getting corrupted, and then I just lose so much progress, and then I'd have to redo it, and honestly, it was just an awful situation, but I needed to get this video out there because this topic just means so much to me, and I knew that I just had to do it. And you can probably tell because some of the clips in that video are legitimately like 1 year old, I'm not kidding. Like, you can obviously notice that my, you know, microphone quality gets better in the middle of the video. You can also notice that very obviously, like, some parts are more well edited than others. Thank you so much, and very honestly, thank you to all my friends who helped me through this because I don't think this video would come out without their help, and I'm glad that it did, I really am. So once again, I just want to thank you for watching till the end and giving this a chance. So thank you so much, but I'll be going now. See you next time. I hope it's soon, but I'm not making that promise again. See ya.